Hi, everyone. I'm Rayana Veríssimo. I'm a product design manager here at GitLab, working with the CI/CD team. And this video is part of a series that looks into the staff and product design manager responsibilities at GitLab through the lenses of designers that made the transition from IC to leadership. And today I'm here with Taurie to talk a little bit about her career development, her role as a manager for the foundations team, and her journey at GitLab. So Taurie, can you start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, I'm Taurie Davis. I've been at GitLab for about 4.5 years, kind of ping-ponged a bit between IC and management, and now I'm currently product design manager at Foundations team, working a lot on our design system and helping facilitate the rest of engineering.
Okay, so you touched on a very important point, your current role. Can you tell us a little bit about what does that look like? What do you actually do as a manager for the foundations team?
Yeah, so a lot of what I'm working on or my day-to-day is kind of figuring out like the vision of where we want to go for foundation. So that means coming up with like what we're going to do for our design system, how we're going to get the rest of the organization to kind of contribute to the design system, and as well as integrating it back into the product. So kind of coming up with like high level direction and vision of where we want to go with that and how it'll best benefit the organization.
And how is your role different from, because before you were staff, right? Your last role, as you were also in
Yeah.
leadership, but IC leadership. Um, how was the transition? I know that that might be a bit, knowing that you already in leadership for so long. Um, yeah, but do you have any challenges navigating the transition from staff to manager?
Yeah, so I think for me, like back when I joined GitLab, if I can just give some context, like we were around 5 designers, and we were being led under the front end organization at that time. Eventually, we were growing a lot. We needed to kind of form our own department. So we ended up hiring a UX lead. I kind of filled that role for a bit, and then I went back to IC. Then we needed a manager. I filled that role, and I went back to IC. And at that time, I really didn't feel that I felt like I could make a better impact or more of an impact as an IC, especially because I was so interested in design systems. But additionally, I didn't really have a lot of design managers that I could have learned from at that time. And I felt like it wasn't in my best interest. It wasn't really in GitLab's best interest. I felt to move into this like manager role. I just didn't really have like the background of people management. So I chose to stay in the IC role, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to be a manager. But then eventually GitLab kind of hired a slew of design managers. We had a director, now we have a VP. So there's been kind of a lot of different backgrounds and people to learn from. And I've done my own learning on the side as well. And I feel like that kind of helped me with the people management transition. I think a lot of the skills that you develop as like a senior IC are still applicable as a people manager. There's just like the added aspect of managing people, like having one-on-ones and doing career conversations and things like that. Yeah.
The fun and tough part of the the manager
Yeah. Yeah.
responsibilities. Yeah, and I understand where you're coming from. I see myself in what you just said, in experimenting with the role, but not feeling comfortable with making the transition because you don't have either a reference, but also in some organizations you don't have a mentor. You don't have someone that it's
Exactly.
working on your development, right? I understand the career development. Yes, it's something personal that we own, but it's also manager facilitated, and I understand how important that can be. But also makes me think of opportunities, right, to develop yourself. So you talked about once we hire a group of design managers, once we start expanding as an organization. But I wanted to, yeah, I'm just curious to hear what development opportunities did you seek, or what was important for you, from the moment where you you decided that, okay, now I'm ready? What were the things that you experienced, either internal and external, in terms of learning?
Yeah, so I started reading Making of a Manager like immediately, which is a pretty good book. And then I also, GitLab has the Plato platform, which is like a mentorship platform. So you can talk with mentors outside of GitLab. So I signed up for that, which was really great. I had 3 different mentors, and I was able to just kind of ask them a ton of different questions. And it also happened to be around the same time when we were doing like the yearly performance reviews. So it was really my first time going through like such a formal process. We had a process back when I was doing the management stuff way back in the day, but it was different than today. So that was really helpful to kind of just get other people's perspectives, see how other organizations did their yearly reviews, how they approached conversations with their reports, things like that. And then additionally, you and I both did the GitLab Management Challenge Week, which was a series of different challenges every day to kind of build on different topics. So that was really valuable. And then, yeah, I think it's like continuous learning opportunity. So like right now I'm doing the Leading Design Conference, which is like a month-long thing. There's different talks every Thursday of the month, and there was a 3-day conference earlier this month related to that. So just continually looking for opportunities to kind of learn more about leadership and people management. I see them as kind of different, separate things.
Yeah, I understand. And I feel like when I look at how we expose, I will put it like that, when we expose individual contributors to leadership, I think as an organization, we do have a set of frameworks, right? And we do have a set of processes that are there in place for people to either gain more exposure or to just have, like, for example, a shadowing experience or internship for learning and things like that. And there are also things as an IC that you can do, for example, to experiment with different roles. So the path of staff and manager. I think when I think of you, I think in a special case. I think you're so fortunate to have had this experience over your transitions at GitLab. But other than the trainings, do you see what do you see today in terms of leadership skills that designers can develop that are not necessarily tied to transitioning to the manager role or to the staff role, if that makes sense? I'm kind of
Yeah, that
freestyling
makes
here.
complete sense. That makes complete sense. So to me, I've thought about this a lot of like, what is leadership? And I feel like it's really hard to kind of drill down into like a sentence because leadership can look so different on different people. But I think if you think about leadership, the overall kind of context is just like the ability to kind of rally a group of people on a common goal, whatever that looks like. You can really do that at any level, right? You don't have to be staff, you don't have to be a people manager, you don't have to be a director or the CEO or anything like that to kind of rally people around a common goal. So I think there's an aspect, especially in our industry in tech, of like understanding the business and being able to know what is beneficial to the business and how that maps to your own career development or your own interests, and then being able to kind of match those two together. And coming up with a vision or direction. And part of that is managing up, right? Like talking to the people above you, about what you think is important, why you think it's important for the organization to focus on that, and coming up with some sort of, especially for GitLab, iterative action plan to get you there. And you can really do that at any level. It doesn't matter what your title is, it just matters that you have this interest in something that will benefit the business.
Yeah, it's not mutually exclusive, right? Moving up the career, the ladder, and exercising leadership or being a reference. And when I think of it as well, I think about the roles of experts that we have, right? An expert, domain experts, or pajamas expert, accessibility expert. When I think about leadership today, and when I look at our organizational structure and the opportunities that are there for us to, just not just because it's not easy. It's a combination of factors. But I think it's also important for designers, but also each individual contributor to define their branding, what makes them special, how can you leverage.
What do they like to do?
Yeah. How can you be, if it's important to you, right, to be a leader, how do you exercise that in your current role in a way that makes you comfortable, but that also has a positive impact on the people around you? That's a good topic. And we didn't talk about your past lives, your previous experience before GitLab, and I'm curious to understand how do you see, your previous work experiences influencing you today? If you had a chance to develop any skills toward leadership outside GitLab as well.
Yeah, so I have a degree in communication design. And then after college, I started working at a startup that was based around real estate search. Very exciting work. And I actually think that role, I was talking with someone about this recently. I think that role really played into why I have such a passion for design systems. So I feel like it played more on that path of my career, less on like the leadership, but I really had a boss that was like behind my shoulder all the time, like move this up 2 pixels or like move this over 3 pixels. And I hated it. I was like, this is the worst thing ever. So I think that's why I'm like very much into design systems of like, we have this specific spacing and we have all these guidelines and like, you don't get to say that you need to move this over by a pixel or anything like that. So I really think that like played into how I've gravitated towards design systems, which eventually led to, me really working on that at GitLab and me looking at where I could have the greatest impact here. And for a long time, that was the IC track. It wasn't until Foundations really formed that I felt like I could make a greater impact as a people manager at that point.
Did you actually work on a formal career development or career plan document process, whatever you want to call, or was your your process more fluid? As in, okay, I've been experimenting with this. I'm kind of learning what I want to become or what I want to get, or were you more precise about how you plan your career?
I've always been more on the fluid side. I haven't really like created a ton of documents for myself. Definitely more on the fluid side. And I think that's all very individualistic. I know some people are like really into creating like, here's where I want to go, here's one of my goals, like here's how I'm going to get there. I haven't really done that. I don't know. I've been kind of thrown into different roles, I feel, and like been able to try them out. And that's been really helpful. But I think I was talking with Christy about this a while ago. Like, I didn't know where I wanted to go. And I feel like I didn't really know where I wanted to go until like the Foundations team formed. And it was like, all right, this is something that I like really wanted to do. And I get to work on what I love to work on with really awesome people. So it just kind of worked out. But yeah, I haven't really done the whole like maybe if I would have created something, then I wouldn't have been so confused about where I wanted to go, but I didn't do it.
You would have figured that out 3 years ago.
Yeah. And I think like part of it is like, I've changed my mind multiple times, and that's okay. It's okay to change your mind. Like, a lot of people transition back and forth, and if the company can support that, great. The company can't always support that, so keep that in mind. But if they can, it's a good opportunity to kind of like actually try what you want to do.
That's going to be my next point. I think GitLab, I've been here for like 2.5 years now, and it's a complete different company from when I joined back in 2018, I think. So I think the way I see, right, from the outside and the experience working with you is that your roles, they change as the company also evolved, right? So it's a reflection. of that as well, the need for the company, for you or someone to adapt and fill in the gaps in these holes, and then you gain the
Yeah,
experience. Yeah.
exactly. And that's a really good point. Like that's a lot of what leadership is about, right? Is like being able to identify those gaps and then being able to figure out how to fill them and
Hmm.
how to get people to help you to fill them. I think
Yeah.
those are two of the major
Yeah.
points.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the conversations I had with myself, right, in previous lives outside of GitLab, but also with mentors and my experience as acting manager is that it is. First off, I want to say that it's okay that you don't know where you're going. I feel like
Yeah,
people put so much pressure
absolutely.
on themselves that, oh, I have to have a plan so that I
I
get
still don't know
promotion.
where
And
I'm going.
where
I
am
don't
I?
know. Yeah.
And that's awesome. That's fine, because that's when you have the opportunity to create ways to experiment with different things, right? I'm come from
Absolutely.
the the idea or the assumption that if you already know, sometimes that it's too rigid, and you
Yeah.
don't look around you to see what else you need to develop or what other skills, for example, you could evolve that or improve that would influence and benefit you as a person, as a professional. Um, so I'm very structured. So I'm very detailed. I treat my career almost like a design system. Everything documented.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because I want to know, okay, this is what I evolved or developed this year, this quarter. But at the same time, you only know for sure once you get there, right?
Yeah.
And you experiment with the roles, and that's why I
I
think it's
think
so.
that's an important part for like being able to advocate for yourself as well. Like not necessarily related to leadership, although kind of, but being able like if you're writing down all the tasks that you're doing, like your people manager doesn't see everything that you do. So
Hmm.
being able to showcase that is a really important skill. I
Yeah,
definitely recommend doing that.
yeah,
And then not being afraid to be like, this is all the awesome stuff I did when yearly performance reviews come up. Like you are
yeah,
advocating for yourself. Um, it's a
yeah.
good skill to have.
I keep telling people, show the receipt. Show the receipts, not
Yeah.
just for the positive, but also this is something that was challenging that happened, and this is how I try to solve the situation. You don't always have to show all the positive, the great things about you and yourself, the process.
Absolutely.
um, I find that important, so I agree. I agree with
Yeah.
you. um, and yeah, leadership is not about your title. It comes from any level. We're all managers of one, right?
Yeah.
And I'm curious to hear what other areas of your personal development you're hoping to explore further as a foundations manager.
Yeah. Right now, Foundations has a really big focus on accessibility. So I'm working to learn more about accessibility so then I can be a better leader in that area. So being able to support the rest of the org to help make some sort of vision in order to make the product more accessible. So that's really my personal development. And then, like I mentioned a little earlier, doing the leading design conference has been really awesome because that's just been different perspectives on leadership itself, which I've really enjoyed because they do approach it from like the IC, the people manager, kind of like the all levels type thing that we've been discussing, which I think is great. There was one talk that was like, why are there even like two tracks? Like why, like, because ICs, they get more away from their craft and focus more on like vision work as well. So there's like kind of this big overlap between IC and people management as you get higher up in your career. But it's been really interesting. So things like that, I'm still actively trying to get other perspectives on, especially outside of GitLab. I can talk to people at GitLab all the time. But it's great to get other people's perspectives who work at different organizations and see how they function. So yeah, those two areas I think I would say are my two focuses currently.
That's awesome. Super exciting. And I think especially with the accessibility, it's something that we are all experiencing, right? This quarter, this year.
Yeah.
We all can um, power up our skills in web
Yeah.
accessibility. So that's also super cool. Um, let's talk about just, we're almost at the end, I think. But I'm curious to hear from you. We talked about showcasing your work. We talked about learning skills and how each person here is a manager of one, but I'm curious to hear what skills, like let's choose three. I asked Pedro to talk about three skills that you think that are important for every IC at GitLab. Can be a designer. In this video series with the focus on for product designers. But three skills that you think that today ICs can develop or that showcase leadership as a manager of one.
Yeah, I think communication has to be really high up on that list for a variety of reasons. Like, one, being able to communicate your ideas in a way that other people will understand, and also fairly quickly, because we are an async organization and people are, their attention is pulled in so many different directions. So how are you going to showcase whatever it is you want to talk about in a way that is succinct and will allow other people to kind of rally around whatever your idea is? I think that's really important. Another one related to that, I think, is the asynchronous communication part. So being able to kind of knowing where and when, not really when, I don't think, knowing where to write your ideas or how to communicate them is really important, so that people can come back and see them later. You don't, if you only post it in Slack once, then a lot of people are going to miss that. So like being able to write it down, knowing where in the handbook it should go, knowing when something should be an issue versus a merge request, like kind of knowing these different ways of how GitLab specifically works in order to get more people to look at whatever it is you're working on. And then third, I think would be having more investment in the business side. So like knowing what our 3-year strategy is, knowing how your work contributes to that strategy. I've like different functions use different terminology, and I think GitLab is very good at like not using lofty terms for different things, which I think is really great. We should all be able to speak in normal human speak, but there's also a level of knowing like, okay, what are the goals of these? What's the goals of product over the next year? What's the goals of sales? Like, how do all these things match up? And how does what I'm working on align with that as well? And then finding opportunities for what you're passionate about to align with those other goals. Those are all ways to help get people to kind of align with your vision. And I think that helps with leadership skills, is like being able to kind of rally together around some common goal.
And to facilitate that, right? That's so interesting. You mentioned that you haven't seen Pedro's recording yet, and Pedro talks about that specifically and he gives an example of Jeremy. So Jeremy is a reference for UI design, right? For accessibility, for he embodies that's part that part of the design department, the UX department, and he's able to lead and to empower others to learn from him. So
exactly. So that's a really good example of somebody coming in with a set of skills. We'll take accessibility, for example, and seeing that there's a business need for this skill and why is it important, and then managing up to the people around you to explain, why is this important? Why should we be focusing on it? And then it becomes something that comes top down, where we now have buy-in from the VP level for the entire organization to do this accessibility training. So it starts from the bottom and then it comes back down. And I think that's really important. And that's an example of that leadership can come from anywhere. It's not about your title.
No, it's not. I think the title is sometimes about the tasks or the things that you need to perform to unblock people in a certain level. But that's my experience at GitLab. I really see a leader in every person I interact with, because we're all experts. And if you look around, there is so much. I do believe everyone can contribute. I do believe that. That's part of my workflow at GitLab. But also when a designer, for example, wants to contribute to the code base, right? Or wants to work on UI polish, or wants to learn more about research, accessibility, that's leadership. And being able to enable growth around you and work with your strategic counterparts so that they can be unblocked by the work that you do. It is just what we do. That's what we're being paid for. But it's also exemplifying leadership as an individual contributor, as a designer.
Yeah,
So
absolutely agree.
yeah. So yeah. And anything else? Sorry, that's a super fun conversation. But
Yeah,
anything
it
else
was
you'd
really
like to add?
fun. Just thought if anybody watching this video wants to chat about anything in their career development, I'd be happy to. But everyone's career path looks different. Leadership can be a part of anyone. Like you said, everyone exhibits leadership. So, and we're all a manager of one. So
Awesome.
thanks so
Well said.
much, Hayana. This was great.
Thank you, Taurie.